Hello, welcome to the Center for Parenting Education and our webcast called Listening Beyond the Words, the Skill of Active Listening. Many parents have heard about how important it is to listen to their children, to give them a safe place to vent their feelings and process situations that might be difficult for them. When done properly, active listening can build self-esteem and strengthen bonds between parents and children. But how exactly do you do this? Listening sounds like it's easy to do, but the truth is that to do it effectively requires skills that are unfamiliar to most people. Most people didn't grow up with it happening in their homes, and it's not something that occurs much in typical day-to-day life. It's actually a very sophisticated activity that takes time and focus to do well. In this podcast, you'll learn how to actively listen to your children. You'll learn responses that are typically used when someone needs to vent, which may be fine to do at certain times but actually discourage your children from talking more. And you'll learn information that will help you to put into practice in everyday life with your family this most important skill of active listening.
There are 5 different ways to use the active listening skill, all communicating that you are attending to and accepting what the other person is saying. The first are nonverbal active listening responses. A nonverbal listening response involves little or no verbal activity, but the listener shows attentiveness, nods, and makes facial expressions in response to statements that reflect feelings. Through body language, you can convey to your children that you are interested in what they have to say and are willing to take the time to listen to them. When you sense that your child wants to talk, you set aside what you're doing, you don't answer the phone, you may establish eye contact or lean forward to indicate that you're listening. Nonverbal responses also include such comments as, "I see," or, "mm-hmm." These nonverbal responses can be represented by a ticket to a movie, in which a person is watching and listening and attending, but not speaking. The second type of response is a content response. A content listening response reflects back to the speaker the content of what was heard. This should be a paraphrase, not parroting, which can be annoying and can sound false to the speaker, but one in which you describe back to the person what you heard. So, for example, when a child says, "I can't sleep because I think a monster's going to get me," a content listening response would be, "When you think there's a monster who might get you, you can't sleep." These feeling responses can be represented by a mirror because you're reflecting back to your child what you hear them say. The third type is a feeling response. When you're using a feeling listening response, you focus on the feelings you think the speaker might be experiencing. Notice the word think. The tone for any active listening response is usually tentative, almost as if it ended in a question mark, as if you're checking with the person that you accurately picked up the feelings underlying their words. A feeling response to the child who can't sleep could be, "When you think a monster might get you, you're too scared to go to sleep." These feeling responses can be represented by a trash can in which your children can dump their feelings when they vent. The fourth type of listening response is a clarifying one. A clarifying listening response takes a much broader or deeper view of the situation the person is facing, offers other possible reactions, and identifies potential needs, values, expectations, wishes, implications, and underlying issues. A clarifying listening response to the child worried about the monster would be, "Thinking there's a monster somewhere around makes you feel as though you have to stay awake so he can't get you, because if you fall asleep, you're worried you won't be able to protect yourself." Clarifying responses can be represented by a calculator, which helps someone to process information. The fifth and final type of response is a universal truth. When you use a universal truth listening response with your children, you're offering more of a broad commentary about the situation that reflects needs, feelings, or experiences that your children might have. Often these responses are ways to teach your children a universal truth that relates to the situation and their reactions to it. They can give your child food for thought as far as processing the situation and helps him feel less alone. After all, you are telling your child that others have walked in their shoes and gone before them. The statement you make is usually perceived as being more objective because it's given in the third person. A universal listening response to the frightened child might be, people can be afraid even if they've been told over and over that there's nothing to be afraid of. The feelings just stay even if the person knows in his head that what he's afraid of really isn't there. These responses can be represented by the world since you're giving your children universal truths which tell him that other people often react in the same way as he has to similar situations. So to summarize, the 5 different ways to active listen are through nonverbal responses, content, feeling, clarifying, and universal truth responses. We encourage you to practice each of these ways to listen to people. Often it's best to practice with people who are not emotionally involved with you or you with them. It's easier to stay objective while you're still learning when you're more detached.
There are 5 responses that are healthy and appropriate at certain times, but they're not active listening. They're often used when someone is trying to be sympathetic to another person. There's definitely a time and a place for them when you talk with your children, but since they're not active listening responses, they won't necessarily help your child to explore a situation and come to his or her own decisions about how to handle it. They don't allow your children to vent their feelings. In fact, they can cut off feelings, and they don't necessarily enhance your relationship with your children in the same way that active listening can, encouraging closeness, respect, and ultimately independence. We call these responses rescue, R-E-S-S-Q, and you'll see why in a few moments. The R in rescue stands for reassuring or affirming. This form of communication tends to be a conversation stopper because it sends the message that the person is fully capable of handling the situation even when he is absolutely certain that he can't. And it suggests that it's time for the person to stop talking about it and to just move on. If it's used too soon, it can feel discounting, as if you're saying that whatever the problem is, it's not so bad. For example,
"It's going to be all right soon, I'm sure. Oh, you can do it. No big deal. Forget about it. This happens to kids your age all the time."
The E in rescue stands for explaining. This form of communication tends to place the focus on the situation, not on the person. It suggests the person consider things at an intellectual level rather than a feeling level. It also can seem to tell the person that he or she should consider why things are this way in order to encourage him or her to give up on his reaction. So, for example,
"The reason this might have happened is, this happened because you weren't."
Okay, the first S in rescue is for suggesting, trying to solve or to advise. This form of communication also moves the conversation into action mode. It denies the importance of venting feelings, sorting, and processing. It may tell your child that he or she is not capable of handling the situation and that you know best. Some examples are,
"Well, one way to handle this is, have you thought about, if you would just do this, then."
The second S in rescue stands for sharing your own story or your feelings. This form of communication shifts the attention from the person speaking to the person who is supposedly listening. While you may be trying to say, "See how much I understand?" your sharing may actually move the focus of both of you away from what your child is trying to say, and usually changes the flow of the conversation. It can be hard for your child to shift back to talking about himself.
So, for example, "I know just how you feel. Once when that happened to me," or, "You should hear what my experience was."
The Q in rescue represents questioning. This form of communication shifts the control of the conversation from the speaker to the listener. It can interrupt the process in several ways. It makes the speaker accountable to the listener. It can change the direction the conversation would have taken if the speaker was following his or her own train of thought, and it makes the speaker move from a feeling mode to a thinking mode, shifting from speaking from the heart to needing to use the mind. For example,
"Well, why'd you do that? What happened after? Wait, back up. What did happen before? Why do you think he did that?"
So there's definitely an important place for each of these rescue responses, depending on timing, the situation, and the needs of your child. There will be times when your children need reassurance, when you'll want to explain and teach them things so they can understand the world better, when they'll need you to step in to help them solve problems they're facing, when you want to share parts of your life with them, and when you will question them in order to get more information about something they're experiencing. But remember, when you want your children to talk, when you sense they have strong feelings, the most effective way to help them is to use the skills of active listening. You can employ the rescue techniques later. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. In the next section, you'll learn more about how to become a skilled and effective active listener.